Joining us right now to sort it all out is Wamsi Mohan, Bank of America's security analyst. And Wamsi, let's just start with the news this morning, and that is this EU tax situation. It's been going on since 2014. We all kind of remember at some point what happened, but I forgot that it was still out there and that this could actually come back and bite them. You're talking about more than $14 billion in taxes. What do you think of the situation?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good morning, Becky. Look, I mean, I think that it's obviously an unfortunate ruling from an Apple standpoint, and they've been in court for a long time. But let's put this in the context for investors, right? $14 billion of cash, essentially, that they've already escrowed and put away just in case that this really eventuality would occur. When you think about it in terms of Apple's free cash flow, right? We're talking about $14 billion of what they generate, close to $100 billion annually, so less than 2 months of cash flow that is really being impacted. So when you think of Apple as an investment, this is more noise than anything else. It's unfortunate. Obviously, they fought it for a long time, and no one wants to give up $14 billion that could be put to other use. But at the same time, I think in the context of Apple as an investment in the long run, it is not a very big deal.
That's 14% of free cash flow. That seems like a really big deal. I would notice that if it was my bottom line.
Sure. I mean, for 1 year, yes, absolutely. But when you think about Apple's ability, and this is where Apple is so unique that you do this annually, every year, right? So it does take away $14 billion, absolutely. Not to say that that's minuscule, but in the scheme of what it means from an evaluation perspective, right? Like when you've got about 15 billion in shares, you're talking about $1 per share. So it's unfortunate. Obviously, this is not the outcome that Apple would have wanted. But at the same time, when you think about it in the context of where the upside could lie, how much of earnings could really come through in the next several years, I would say this is more of a blip and a nuisance rather than really something that truly changes an investor.
Okay, I can understand that perspective on $14 billion, a one-off, but it does seem like the EU is looking at this and realizing Apple and a few other big tech companies do this every year repeatedly and are looking for ways to come at a bigger bite of the apple, so to speak, and continue to kind of come after them, companies like Google and a few others. Is the EU and the way they look at our big tech companies a problem for Apple or any of the other companies that you cover?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I mean, the EU, it's actually fairly difficult to deal with the EU, right? We talk about China all the time. We talk about EU all the time. In China, yeah, when you set the rule, it is the rule, and as you follow it, you're in compliance. There's no question around it. With the EU, there have been many instances where the EU has kind of said, "Oh, like let's go ahead and do this," and Apple goes ahead and implements something, and then you come back and say, "Well, we have other companies complaining about it." This is very much so the case in EU DMA in the services business, where it feels like a moving goalpost. Right. Yeah. So now you're taxing innovation. You're actually preventing EU consumers from getting access to the latest and greatest features. For instance, Apple Intelligence is not getting rolled out in the EU right away. And why is that? It's because when all the rules are a moving goalpost, then you don't really know if you're going to be in compliance or not. You're going to deploy a bunch of R&D dollars and find out at the end of the day that you really cannot be in compliance, and then go and re-engineer things and try to work out and find solutions. So it's definitely a problem. It's a problem that's kind of hard to overcome, right? Because you actually don't know what exactly the rules are, and when they're moving goalposts, it just makes it so hard to deal with the EU.